child ignored by doctor. Hours later, he finds out it was a judge's son. Jennifer Davis held her son Ethan's hand tightly as she watched the busy emergency room at Mercy Medical Center in Philadelphia. The 9-year-old boy had been running a high fever for 2 days, and she had decided to take him to the most reputable private hospital in the area, even though she knew paying for the treatment would be difficult. That's when Dr. Richard Miller walked through the waiting room, his lab coat immaculate and his posture proud. Jennifer approached him with her son in her arms, but the doctor barely glanced at her before stepping aside and heading straight for a well-dressed family that had just arrived. "Doctor, please," Jennifer called, but he had already entered one of the exam rooms. The receptionist, a middle-aged blonde woman, watched the scene with a forced smile. "Ma'am, Dr. Richard only sees private patients. Do you have insurance?" "I have basic coverage from my job," Jennifer replied, showing her health insurance card. "Oh, then you'll have to wait. The doctor doesn't accept that type of insurance." Jennifer's stomach tightened. She had spent her last savings to get there by taxi, believing her son would receive good care at a private hospital. Ethan was growing hotter in her arms, breathing with difficulty. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now back to the story. 3 hours passed. Jennifer watched as several people who arrived after her were seen first. Every time she tried to approach a medical staff member, she got the same answer. She would be helped as soon as possible. Ethan had fainted twice in her arms, but when she rushed to ask for help, they told her it was normal with a fever. Then an older nurse named Dorothy approached them. She was around 60, with graying hair tied in a bun and a kind expression that contrasted with the coldness of the other staff. "My dear, this boy is very sick. How long have you been here?" "Over 3 hours, ma'am. I've asked for help several times, but..." Dorothy touched Ethan's forehead and her face grew concerned. "This fever isn't normal. I'll get someone right away." She walked firmly over to Dr. Richard, who was chatting casually with other doctors near the reception desk. "Doctor, there's a child in the waiting room who needs urgent care." Richard didn't even turn fully to face her. "Dorothy, how many times do I have to explain? We have priority protocols here. If it's not private, they wait." "But doctor, the boy could have something serious. His fever is dangerously high and..." "Dorothy!" Richard raised his voice, drawing stares from people in the waiting area. "How long have you been in this profession? High fever in kids is the most common thing in the world. Stop making a scene and do your job." The nurse returned to Jennifer, her face red with humiliation. Jennifer had heard the whole exchange, and tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't just worry for Ethan. It was the shame of being treated as if she didn't deserve proper medical care. At that moment, Ethan began convulsing in his mother's arms. Jennifer screamed for help, and several people rushed over. Dorothy ran to them and immediately began first aid, shouting for someone to get Dr. Richard. "What's going on here?" Richard finally appeared, visibly annoyed by the commotion. "The boy is having a seizure, doctor. We need to take him to the emergency room now," Dorothy said. "Calm down, Dorothy. It's probably just a febrile seizure." "It's just a fever, it'll pass," replied Richard, without even approaching Ethan. "Doctor, with all due respect, you haven't examined the child yet. How can you be sure?" Richard took 2 steps toward Dorothy, clearly irritated. "Are you questioning my diagnosis? I've been a doctor for 15 years with a specialization in pediatrics. I think I can tell a simple febrile seizure from something more serious." Jennifer listened to all this while holding Ethan, who had stopped convulsing but was very pale and nearly unconscious. Her mind was racing, but one thing was clear: that doctor didn't want to properly treat her son. That's when she made a decision that would change everything. "Dorothy," Jennifer called to the nurse, "could you lend me your phone? Mine is dead." "Of course, dear." Jennifer dialed a number she knew by heart and waited just 2 rings. "Dr. Henry, this is Dr. Jennifer Davis. I need to speak with you urgently about a situation at Mercy Medical Center." On the other end, the voice responded immediately. "Dr. Jennifer, what are you doing at Mercy? Shouldn't you be in court today?" "It's a long story, doctor, but I need you to call the hospital's chief medical officer right now. My son, a child is being neglected here and I'm documenting everything. I'm calling now, doctor. Wait there. This'll be resolved in 5 minutes. Jennifer hung up and handed the phone back to Dorothy, who looked at her curiously. Richard had stepped away to tend to other patients but was still at the front desk. "Dear, who was that Dr. Henry?" Dorothy asked. "A colleague," Jennifer replied, offering no further details. Barely 3 minutes passed before the front desk phone rang. The receptionist answered, and Jennifer overheard part of the conversation. "Yes, Dr. Benjamin." "What? Priority care? But she only has basic insurance." "Understood, sir. I'll arrange it immediately." The woman hung up and looked directly at Jennifer, confused. "Mrs. Davis, the chief medical officer asked me to take you to the VIP room immediately. There's been some misunderstanding about your care." Richard, who was nearby, turned around, curious. "VIP? What's going on here?" "Doctor, the chief requested priority care for Mrs. Davis and her son immediately. That doesn't make sense. They have basic insurance. There must be some mistake," Richard said. Just then, the elevator doors opened, and Dr. Benjamin Walker, the hospital's chief medical officer, stepped out accompanied by 2 other doctors Jennifer didn't recognize. Benjamin was a man in his 50s, with graying hair and a stern expression rarely seen in the hospital halls. His sudden presence in the emergency room made all the staff stiffen. "Where is Mrs. Davis?" Benjamin asked, looking around. Jennifer stepped forward, still holding Ethan. "That's me, doctor. Mrs. Davis, I deeply regret what happened. We're taking your son to our best emergency room right now. Dr. Richard," he called authoritatively. Richard approached, visibly nervous. "Yes, Dr. Benjamin? You will personally examine this child. Now. And I want a full report on what happened here today." "Of course, doctor, but may I ask why this sudden change in protocol?" Benjamin looked at Richard with a mix of disapproval and surprise. "Protocol? What protocol would that be, Dr. Richard?" "Well, sir, the protocol of prioritizing private patients over those with basic insurance. That's how we've always worked here." The silence that followed was deafening. Benjamin glanced at the other doctors with him, then back at Richard. "Dr. Richard, are you telling me there's an official protocol at this hospital to discriminate against patients based on their financial status?" Richard realized he'd said something wrong but wasn't quite sure what. "Not official, doctor, but I always understood that. The private patients." "The private patients what, Dr. Richard?" By now, the entire reception area had fallen silent. Staff, patients, and visitors watched the tense exchange between the doctors. Jennifer still held Ethan, but was now fully focused on what was happening. "Dr. Benjamin," Dorothy intervened, "may I explain what happened here today?" "Please, Dorothy, you have my complete trust. This child has been here for over 3 hours with a very high fever. I tried several times to get Dr. Richard's attention, but he refused to treat him, saying it was just basic insurance. The boy had a seizure just minutes ago, and even then, he dismissed it as a simple febrile seizure without even examining him." Benjamin listened in silence, his expression growing graver by the second. "And you, Mrs. Davis, are the child's mother?" "Yes," Jennifer replied. "What do you do for a living?" Jennifer hesitated for a moment. She knew her answer would change everything, but she also knew she could no longer pretend. "I'm a judge, Dr. Benjamin, Judge Jennifer Davis, from the Family and Youth Court." The impact of her words was immediate. Richard visibly paled. The receptionist dropped some papers she was holding, and nearby staff exchanged nervous glances. "Dr. Jennifer," Benjamin said, now much more formal. "Are you conducting an investigation?" "No, Dr. Benjamin. Today, I'm just a desperate mother who brought her son in for treatment. But I can say that everything I witnessed here today was deeply concerning." Richard tried to step forward. "Doctor, I didn't know. If I had known you were a judge..." Jennifer cut him off with a firmness that made everyone in the room pay attention. "Dr. Richard, the problem isn't that you didn't know who I was. The problem is that my son should have received the same treatment regardless of who I am. And from what I saw today, that's not what happens. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Benjamin quickly intervened. Dr. Jennifer, we'll take your son for an examination immediately. Dr. Richard, accompany her and run all necessary tests. I want this child to receive the best possible care. Yes, sir, Richard replied, clearly shaken. As they were led to the emergency room, Jennifer observed Richard's behavior. He had completely transformed, now attentive, polite, and showing genuine concern for Ethan. But Jennifer knew this change wasn't because of her son's condition. It was because of who she was. In the emergency room, Richard conducted a thorough examination of Ethan. He ordered blood tests, x-rays, even an MRI. The entire medical team was mobilized to care for the boy. Doctor, Richard said while waiting for the test results, I'd like to apologize for what happened. There's truly no excuse. Dr. Richard, Jennifer replied, looking him straight in the eye, you owe me an explanation. How exactly does this unofficial protocol you mentioned work? Richard shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Doctor, it's not exactly a protocol. It's more of a practical guideline we've developed over the years. What kind of guideline? Well, doctor, private patients generate more revenue for the hospital. So naturally they get a certain priority in care. It's not written down anywhere, but all the doctors know it. Jennifer felt a mix of anger and sadness. And patients with basic insurance, how are they treated? They get care, doctor, but maybe not with the same urgency. Dr. Richard, do you have children? The question caught Richard off guard. I do, doctor. 2 kids. And if one of your children was sick, how would you react if a doctor refused to treat them properly? Richard lowered his head. I'd be desperate, doctor. Then why did you do this to me and my son? Before Richard could answer, a nurse entered the room with the test results. Doctor, the results are in. Richard scanned the papers and his expression turned serious. Dr. Jennifer, your son has a severe bacterial infection. If he hadn't been treated today, he could have developed serious complications. Jennifer's legs nearly gave out. If she hadn't used her position to get care, what would have happened to Ethan? Doctor, are you telling me my son was really at risk? Yes, doctor. The infection was already spreading. We'll start antibiotic treatment immediately. At that moment, Jennifer made a decision that would change not only her and Ethan's lives, but also those of many other families. Dr. Richard, I need you to be completely honest with me. How many children have come here with cases like my son's and were ignored because of their insurance? Richard hesitated. Doctor, I'm a judge. I know when someone's being evasive. Answer my question. A few, doctor, but they always ended up getting care eventually. Eventually? What if one of them had a real emergency like my son? Richard couldn't answer. Then Dorothy, who had stayed in the room helping with Ethan, spoke up. Doctor, can I say something? Of course, Dorothy. I've worked at this hospital for 20 years. I've seen things here I shouldn't have. Children who could have been saved if they'd been treated on time. Families humiliated for not having money. And it's not just Dr. Richard. It's a system that's been here for years. Richard glared at Dorothy. Dorothy, you're exaggerating. I'm not, doctor. And the doctor here has a right to know. There's a list of doctors who only take private patients. Reception staff are told to discourage basic insurance patients. There's even a WhatsApp group where they warn each other about problem patients. Jennifer listened, feeling an outrage she'd never known. Dorothy, can you prove what you're saying? I've written everything down, doctor. Names, dates, specific cases. I always thought this would blow up someday, so I documented it. Richard tried to intervene. Doctor, Dorothy is being dramatic. It's not like that. Dr. Richard, Jennifer cut him off firmly. You will stay quiet now. Dorothy, I want to see everything you have. Dorothy left and returned minutes later with an old notebook full of notes. Doctor, here it is. There's a case of a child with pneumonia who waited 6 hours for care, an elderly man with a suspected heart attack sent to Medicaid, a pregnant woman who lost... Dorothy paused, glancing at Richard. Go on, Dorothy, Jennifer said. A pregnant woman who lost her baby because she wasn't treated in time. The room fell silent. Richard was visibly shaken, and Jennifer felt an immense weight on her shoulders. Dorothy, why didn't you ever report this? Doctor, I tried. I went to the hospital's ombudsman, the medical board, even the Department of Health. But they always told me it was my word against theirs, and I'm just a nurse. You're not just a nurse, Dorothy. You're a healthcare professional with 20 years of experience and valuable testimony. At that moment, Ethan began to stir on the stretcher. He was waking up, and his fever had dropped considerably. "Mum?" he called weakly. Jennifer rushed to him. "I'm here, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "Better, Mum. Where are we?" "We're at the hospital, honey. You were sick, but you're going to be okay now." Ethan looked around and saw Richard. "Is that the doctor who didn't want to see me when we got here?" The innocent question hit Richard like a punch to the gut. Jennifer saw the doctor shift uncomfortably. "Honey, how do you know that? You were asleep." "I heard the conversation, Mom. He said he wouldn't treat me because we didn't have money." Richard stepped closer to the stretcher. "Ethan, I made a huge mistake. I'm sorry." The boy looked at him with the innocent eyes of a 9-year-old. "It's okay. But next time, treat the sick kids first, even if they don't have much money, okay?" Ethan's simple words echoed through the room like a lesson in humanity no medical school had ever taught Richard. "I will, Ethan. I promise," Richard replied, his voice thick with emotion. Jennifer watched the entire scene and realized she had two choices: use her position to destroy this doctor's career and expose the hospital publicly, or use this situation to truly change the way care was delivered here. "Dr. Richard," she said, "I need to speak with you privately." They left the room, leaving Ethan in Dorothy's care. "Doctor, I'll be direct. What happened here today was serious, very serious. And it wasn't an isolated case, as Dorothy confirmed. Doctor, I know, and I take full responsibility." "Taking responsibility isn't enough, Doctor. I need concrete changes." "What do you want from me?" Jennifer thought for a moment. "I want you to help me understand how this discriminatory system works here. I want names, procedures, evidence, and I want you to commit to changing it. Doctor, if I do that, I could lose my job. And if you don't, you could lose much more than that. I have enough evidence to sue you and the hospital for medical negligence and discrimination. The choice is yours." Richard took a deep breath. "What exactly do you want to know?" "Everything. How this system started, who maintains it, how many doctors are involved, how staff are trained. I want to understand the entire structure." "Doctor, this won't be easy to explain. It's a system that developed gradually over years." "I have time, Doctor, and patience." Richard glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "It started about 5 years ago when the hospital was struggling financially. The administration began pressuring doctors to prioritize patients who brought in more revenue. And how exactly was this pressure applied? At first, it was just informal talks. Then they started tracking our patient visits and holding monthly meetings to show how much revenue each doctor generated. And who made these decisions? The administrative director, Julian Fields. He worked with a few senior doctors who agreed with the strategy." "Did Dr. Benjamin know about this?" "No, Doctor. Dr. Benjamin handles clinical operations. Julian handles finances. They rarely communicate." Jennifer was beginning to grasp the problem's structure. And how were reception staff trained? They received service optimization training. Basically, they were taught to identify patient profiles and direct them accordingly. Direct them how? Private patients were seen immediately. Premium insurance patients had high priority. Basic insurance patients were told to wait or, when possible, referred to other hospitals. Jennifer felt her outrage grow with every word. "And you doctors, how did you react to this?" Most just went along with the system. Some tried to resist at first, but ended complying to keep their jobs. Others, like me, eventually saw it as normal. Normal? Letting sick children wait is normal? Richard lowered his head. "It's not, Doctor. And today, I understood that in a very painful way." Just then, Dorothy appeared in the hallway. "Doctor, Ethan is asking for you." Jennifer returned to the room where Ethan was more awake and responsive. The antibiotics were already working, and he looked much better. "Mom, can I go home?" Not yet, sweetheart. You need to stay here a little longer to make sure you're okay. All right. Mom, why was that nurse crying? Jennifer glanced at Dorothy, who was discreetly wiping away tears. Dorothy, what happened? Nothing, Doctor. Nothing. It's just seeing Ethan get better made me emotional. I was so scared when he had that seizure. Dorothy, Jennifer called the nurse to a corner of the room. Can you tell me more about that pregnant woman you mentioned? Dorothy looked around and lowered her voice. It was 2 years ago, Doctor. A young woman, 8 months pregnant, came here in terrible pain. She only had basic insurance. She waited for 4 hours, while other patients were seen first. And what happened? By the time she was finally treated, it was too late. She was in complicated premature labor. She lost the baby and almost died too. Dorothy, did that woman file a complaint? She tried, Doctor, but she was told to settle with the hospital. She got a small payout in exchange for staying quiet. Jennifer felt her chest tighten. How many families had suffered tragedies that could have been prevented? Dorothy, do you remember her name? Amanda Thompson. I have her address in my notebook. Do you still keep in touch? I do, Doctor. She works as a house cleaner. She never fully recovered from what happened. Jennifer made a decision. Dorothy, could you contact her? Tell her a judge would like to speak about her case. Of course, Doctor. I can call right now. As Dorothy made the call, Jennifer reflected on the responsibility in her hands. This wasn't just about her son. It was about all the families harmed by that system. Doctor, Dorothy returned. Amanda said she can come right now if you'd like to talk. Perfect. Ask her to come. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. An hour later, Amanda Thompson arrived at the hospital. She was a woman around 30, with dark hair tied in a ponytail and a look of exhaustion that seemed permanent. Jennifer greeted her in a private room Benjamin had made available. Amanda, I'm Judge Jennifer Davis. Dorothy told me what happened to you here 2 years ago. Amanda shifted nervously in her chair. Doctor, I signed an agreement. I can't talk about it. Amanda, don't worry about the agreement. As a judge, I can assure you won't face any trouble for speaking with me. In fact, it's very important you share your story. Why, Doctor? Jennifer decided to be completely honest. Because today, my son almost went through the same thing your baby did. And I've learned this isn't an isolated case. Amanda began to cry. Doctor, I tried to fight. I tried to seek justice. But they told me it would be my word against the hospitals, that it would be better to accept the settlement and move on. Amanda, you're not alone now. I have evidence that there's a discriminatory system at work here, and I need your help to change it. What do you want me to do? I want you to tell me exactly what happened that day. Every detail you remember. Amanda took a deep breath and began to recount. I arrived here on a Tuesday morning, Doctor. I was in terrible pain and my husband rushed me in. At the reception, when they asked about my insurance and I said it was basic, the woman gave me a nasty look. Did she say anything? She said I'd have to wait, that they had a lot of private patients that day and my case didn't seem urgent. Not urgent? You were 8 months pregnant with severe pain. Exactly, Doctor. But she said pain during pregnancy was normal. I sat in that waiting room watching people who arrived after me get seen first. How long did you wait? 4 hours, Doctor. During those 4 hours, the pain kept getting worse. My husband tried to get someone's attention, but they always said it was almost my turn. And when you were finally seen, Amanda stopped speaking and began to cry harder. Amanda, I know this is difficult, but I need you to keep going. When they finally called me, Doctor, I could barely stand from the pain. The doctor who examined me said I was in premature labor and needed an emergency C-section. And then? Then everything happened so fast. They took me to the operating room, but Amanda couldn't go on. Jennifer stood and went to her. Amanda, you don't have to tell me if it's too hard. No, Doctor, I want to. My baby was born, but he didn't make it. The doctors said if I'd been seen sooner, he would have survived. Jennifer felt tears welling in her own eyes. Amanda, I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you, Doctor. After that, a lawyer from the hospital showed up saying they regretted what happened, but these things occur. They offered a small settlement in exchange for me signing a non-disclosure agreement. And you signed? I did, Doctor. My husband and I didn't have the money to fight a hospital, and I just wanted to forget it all. Amanda, did you ever sue the hospital? My husband wanted to, but the lawyer we consulted said it would be very hard to prove negligence, that it would be my word against theirs. Jennifer listened to the whole story and felt a determination she had never known before. This couldn't keep happening. Amanda, would you be willing to testify officially about what happened? Doctor, won't there be trouble because of the agreement? There won't be any trouble. As a judge, I can assure you of that. In fact, any agreement that prevents someone from reporting medical negligence can be considered void. Then yes, Doctor. If I can help other families avoid what I went through, I'll do it. At that moment, Dorothy entered the room. Doctor, excuse me. Dr. Benjamin is asking if he can speak with you. Of course, Dorothy. Amanda, can you wait here? I still want to talk more with you. Of course, Doctor. Jennifer left the room and found Benjamin in the hallway, accompanied by a man she didn't know. Dr. Jennifer, this is Julian Fields, our administrative director. Julian was a man around 40, well-dressed and with a serious expression. Dr. Davis, it's a pleasure to meet you. Dr. Benjamin told me about today's incident. I'd like to speak with you about it. Of course, Mr. Julian. In fact, I'd very much like to speak with you as well. They headed to the boardroom, where Benjamin closed the door. Doctor, Julian began. First, I'd like to formally apologize for the treatment you and your son received today. That does not reflect the values of our hospital. Mr. Julian, with all due respect, I believe it does, and I'll explain why. Jennifer recounted everything she had uncovered in the last few hours, the prioritization system based on financial means, the instructions given to staff, the case of Amanda Thompson, and Dorothy's notes. Benjamin listened in silence, his expression growing more shocked. Julian, meanwhile, looked visibly uncomfortable. Doctor, Benjamin said when she finished, if all of this is true, it's far more serious than I imagined. Dr. Benjamin, were you unaware of any of this? Absolutely unaware, Doctor. I only handle clinical matters. Administrative affairs are Julian's responsibility. Jennifer turned to Julian. Mr. Julian, do you have anything to say about these allegations? Julian took a deep breath. Doctor, our hospital, like any business, must remain financially viable. Sometimes that requires difficult decisions about resource allocation. Mr. Julian, are you admitting there's a system of discrimination based on financial means? It's not discrimination, Doctor. It's resource management. Benjamin abruptly stood from his chair. Julian, what are you saying? Resource management can't mean leaving sick children waiting. Benjamin, you handle medicine, I handle business. That's how we keep this hospital running. Jennifer watched the exchange and understood perfectly the hospital's problematic dynamic. Gentlemen, she interrupted, let me be very clear about this situation. What I've uncovered here today constitutes violations of consumer rights, medical negligence, and discrimination. I can sue this hospital and everyone involved. Julian paled. Doctor, I'm sure we can reach an agreement. I don't want an agreement, Mr. Julian. I want real changes. What kind of changes? Benjamin asked. First, the immediate end of any discriminatory practices. Second, the creation of clear treatment protocols based solely on medical urgency. Third, training for all staff on these new protocols. And if we comply, Julian asked, then we'll discuss the pending legal matters. Benjamin took a firm stance. Doctor, you have my full support. I want these changes implemented immediately. Dr. Benjamin, I also need a full audit of cases from the last 2 years. I want to identify how many similar situations have occurred. It will be done, Doctor. Julian tried again. Doctor, do you understand these changes could significantly impact our revenue? Jennifer looked at him firmly. Mr. Julian, do you understand that keeping this system could significantly impact your freedom? The message was clear. Julian said nothing. Just then, someone knocked at the door. It was Dorothy. Doctor, excuse me. There's someone else here who'd like to speak with you. Who is it, Dorothy? It's Mary Sanders, the mother of a child treated here last week. She heard you were investigating the hospital and came forward on her own. Jennifer looked at Benjamin and Julian. "Gentlemen, I think our conversation is just beginning." Mary Sanders was a woman around 50, with graying hair and a worried expression. She held the hand of a girl about 7 years old. "Doctor, my name is Mary. This is my granddaughter, Lily. I heard you're looking into problems with care at this hospital." "That's right, Mary. What happened with you?" "I brought Lily here last week because she had terrible stomach pain and was vomiting a lot. We waited for 5 hours before being seen." Lily, who was shy beside her grandmother, nodded in confirmation. "And what was the diagnosis?" asked Benjamin. "Appendicitis, doctor. The doctors said if we had waited any longer, her appendix could have burst." Benjamin looked at Julian with complete disapproval. "Mary," said Jennifer, "would you mind telling us exactly how the treatment went?" "Of course, doctor. We arrived here Monday morning. The girl was crying from pain and vomited twice just in the waiting room. But when they asked about the insurance and I said it was basic, they told me to sit and wait." "During those 5 hours, did you try asking for help?" "Several times, doctor. But they always told me my turn was coming. I saw many people go ahead of us, people who arrived much later than we did." Lily tugged at her grandmother's blouse. "Grandma, tell her about the rude man." "What man, Lily?" "One of the doctors, doctor. When Lily vomited for the 3rd time, I went to ask for help. The doctor looked at her and said kids always exaggerate, that all she needed was some nausea medicine, and that was it." Benjamin was visibly shaken by each account. "Mary, do you remember that doctor's name?" "Dr. Richard, I think." Jennifer and Benjamin exchanged glances. It was the same doctor who had treated Ethan. "Doctor," said Lily in her childlike voice, "why are some doctors mean?" The innocent question echoed in the room like a punch to the gut for everyone present. "They're not mean, Lily," Jennifer replied. "Sometimes they forget that medicine is about caring for people, not about money." At that moment, Richard appeared at the door. "Dr. Benjamin, I was told you wanted to speak with me." Upon seeing Mary and Lily, Richard stopped. It was obvious he recognized them. "Dr. Richard," said Benjamin, "Mrs. Mary was telling us about last week's treatment." Richard looked at the floor. "I remember the case. The girl had appendicitis. And do you remember saying she was exaggerating?" "Dr. Benjamin, Dr. Richard," Jennifer interrupted. "How many cases like this have you handled in recent years?" "Doctor, I can't give an exact number." "An estimate?" Richard hesitated. "Maybe a few a month." "A few a month?" Benjamin raised his voice. "Are you telling me you dismiss multiple children every month?" "Dr. Benjamin, it's not dismissal. It's just what, Dr. Richard?" Richard looked around the room, saw the 2 mothers with their children, saw Benjamin and Julian watching him expectantly, and finally understood the gravity of what he had been part of all those years. "There's no excuse, Dr. Benjamin. There really isn't." Lily stepped closer to Richard. "Doctor, can you promise you'll be nicer to kids?" Richard knelt to her level. "I promise, Lily. And I'm sorry for being rude to you." "Okay, but don't do it again, okay?" "I won't, I promise." Jennifer watched the scene and saw Richard was genuinely remorseful. But remorse wasn't enough. Concrete changes were needed. "Dr. Richard," she said, "would you be willing to help me map out all the problematic cases from recent years?" "How so, doctor?" "I need a list of all patients who were treated late due to financial issues. I need to understand the scope of the problem." "Doctor, that could be very complicated." "Why complicated?" "Because it might involve several of my colleagues." "Dr. Richard, would you rather help me voluntarily, or should I obtain this information through an official investigation?" Richard realized he had no choice. "I'll help, Doctor." Benjamin made his stance clear. "Dr. Richard, you have my support to do the right thing. And I want to make it clear that no doctor will be penalized for cooperating with this investigation. On the contrary, those who don't cooperate will face consequences." "I understand, Dr. Benjamin." At that moment, Dorothy entered the room again. "Doctor, there are more people in the reception area asking to speak with you. It seems the news has spread, and several families have come here." Jennifer turned to Benjamin. Doctor, I think we'll need a larger space for these conversations. Of course, Doctor. We can use the hospital auditorium. 2 hours later, the auditorium at Mercy Medical Center was packed. There were over 30 families, all with similar stories of inadequate care. Jennifer stood on stage beside Benjamin, looking out at the sea of people who had been harmed by the hospital's discriminatory system. Everyone, Jennifer said into the microphone, I know you're all here because you've faced difficult situations in this hospital. I want you to know I'm here as a judge, but also as a mother who almost went through the same thing today. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. I'll make sure every one of your stories is heard and that real changes are made, but I need your cooperation. A woman in the audience stood up. Doctor, my name is Rose. My son broke his arm 6 months ago and waited 8 hours to be seen here. By the time he was treated, the bone had already set wrong, and he had to have another surgery. Another man stood. I'm John, doctor. My wife was pregnant and started bleeding. They told her it was normal and to wait. She lost the baby. A third person spoke up. I'm Claudia. My father had chest pain. They said it was gas. We only found out it was a heart attack when we took him to another hospital. Story after story, Jennifer realized the problem was far bigger than she'd imagined. These weren't isolated cases. It was a structured system of discrimination that had harmed hundreds of families over the years. Everyone, Benjamin said into the microphone, as the chief medical officer of this hospital, I formally apologize to all the families who've been harmed, and I promise this won't happen again. How can we be sure of that? Someone shouted. Jennifer stepped closer to the microphone. I'll establish a monitoring protocol. Over the next 6 months, I'll make regular surprise visits to this hospital to ensure the new protocols are being followed. And if they're not, another person asked, then the hospital will face the full legal consequences. Julian, who had been at the back of the auditorium, approached the stage. Doctor, may I speak? Of course. Julian stepped onto the stage, visibly nervous. Everyone, as the administrative director, I acknowledge we've made serious mistakes. Starting today, we're implementing complete changes to our care protocols. What kind of changes? Someone called out. First, all patients will be seen strictly in order of arrival and medical urgency, regardless of insurance type. Second, we'll establish an independent external ombudsman to handle complaints. Third, all staff will undergo new training on compassionate care. Rose, the woman who had spoken about her son's broken arm, stood again. And how do we know this isn't just talk? Jennifer answered, Rose, in addition to my oversight as a judge, I'll form a task force with representatives from the families here to monitor the changes. You'll see for yourselves if the protocols are being followed. The crowd's reaction was immediately positive. Applause and murmurs of approval filled the auditorium. John, the man who had lost his baby, stood. Doctor, what about the cases that already happened? Who's going to compensate us for the damages? Benjamin and Julian exchanged nervous glances. John, replied Jennifer, this is a complex issue that needs to be evaluated case by case, but I can assure you no case will be ignored. At that moment, Amanda Thompson, who was in the audience, stood up. Doctor, may I speak? Of course, Amanda. Everyone, I lost my baby 2 years ago in this hospital. All this time I thought I was alone. Today I found out I'm not, and I learned that together we can make a difference. Amanda's words were followed by an emotional silence and then a round of applause. Amanda is right, said Jennifer. Alone, you are just isolated voices. Together you're a force for change no hospital can ignore. An elderly woman stood up at the back of the auditorium. Doctor, my name is Mrs. Helen. I'm 70 years old, and I've seen a lot in my life. What I want to know is, how can we be sure this will really change and isn't just empty promises? Mrs. Helen's question hit home, and everyone in the audience paid close attention to the answer. Mrs. Helen, Jennifer replied, I'll be very specific. In 30 days, I'll make the first surprise visit. In 60 days, I'll review the care reports. In 90 days, I'll gather all the families here again to evaluate the results. And if there's no real change, I'll pursue every legal measure available. And we'll be watching too, said Dorothy, who was standing at the side of the auditorium. I won't let any child go through what these families have endured. Dorothy, Benjamin called, Starting today, I want you to oversee the implementation of the new patient-centered care protocols. It would be an honor, Dr. Benjamin. Just then, Ethan appeared at the auditorium door with a nursing assistant. He looked much better and curious about all the commotion. "Mom?" he called. Jennifer stepped down from the stage and went to him. "Hi, sweetheart, how are you feeling?" "Much better, Mom. Who are all these people?" "They're people who, like us, had trouble getting care at this hospital." Ethan looked at the audience curiously. "And now they'll get treated right?" "Yes, honey. Now everyone will get treated right." Ethan smiled and waved at the crowd, who waved back, visibly moved. "Can I say something?" Ethan asked. "Of course, sweetheart." Jennifer brought him to the microphone and lowered it for him. "Hi everyone, I'm Ethan. Today I was really sick and the doctor didn't want to treat me. But now he promised he'll treat all the kids who are sick, even if they don't have much money. And I believe him because he seemed really sorry." The auditorium fell completely silent, followed by a collective emotion that brought many to tears. Richard, who was at the back, approached the stage. "May I respond to Ethan?" Jennifer looked at her son. "Do you want to hear what the doctor has to say?" Ethan nodded. Richard stepped onto the stage and knelt beside Ethan. "Ethan, thank you for believing in me. I promise you and all these families that I'll never make a child wait for care again." "Do you really promise?" "I really do." "Okay then," said Ethan, and held out his hand. Richard shook it, visibly moved. The scene was followed by a standing ovation from the entire audience. When the applause died down, Jennifer took the microphone again. "Everyone, before we wrap up, I want to make one thing very clear. What happened here today wasn't just about justice. It was about humanity. It was about remembering that medicine is about caring for people, not profit." "And what can we do to help?" asked Rose. "First, keep holding them accountable. Second, share this story. Third, always demand the dignified care you deserve. And fourth, don't let this be forgotten." Benjamin Walker stepped up to the microphone. "Everyone, I want to make a public commitment here. In 6 months, I want this hospital to be a benchmark for compassionate care, and I want you all to witness this transformation." Julian, still visibly shaken by everything that had happened, also spoke up. "And I want to apologize once again. As an administrator, I lost sight of what truly matters. I'll work to make this hospital a place where all families feel welcome." By the time the meeting ended, it was late afternoon. Families gradually left, but many stopped to talk with Jennifer and exchange contact information. A support network was forming, one that would extend far beyond that day. Amanda approached Jennifer when most people had already left. "Doctor, I don't know how to thank you. For 2 years, I thought I was alone in my pain. Today, I realized I can turn that pain into purpose." "Amanda, what do you plan to do?" "I want to help other families going through similar situations. I want my story to prevent other mothers from losing their children." "I'm sure you'll make a difference, Amanda." Dorothy also walked over. "Doctor, can I say something?" "Of course, Dorothy." "In 20 years of nursing, today was the day I felt proudest to be a nurse." "Why?" "Because I finally felt like we truly make a difference in people's lives." Richard, who had stayed behind in the auditorium helping to organize the chairs, approached Jennifer. "Doctor, may I speak with you privately?" "Of course, Doctor." They stepped aside to a corner of the auditorium. "Doctor, I need to confess something. Over the last few years, I'd become a doctor I would have despised. Today, seeing my son in the hospital, I understood what families feel when they're mistreated." "You have children?" "A 12-year-old daughter. And for the first time, I imagined what it would be like if she needed medical care and was ignored the way I ignored Ethan. How did that make you feel?" "Desperate and regretful. Deeply regretful." "Dr. Richard, regret is the first step, but what matters now are your actions." "Doctor, may I make a proposal?" "What is it?" "I want to volunteer at public hospitals on weekends. I want to relearn how to be a doctor by focusing on people, not money." Jennifer was surprised by the offer. "Are you sure about this?" "I am. In fact, I need this. I need to reconnect with the reasons I chose medicine in the first place." "Then I think it's an excellent idea, Doctor." At that moment, Ethan ran up to them. "Mom, can we go home now?" Yes, sweetheart, you're feeling much better. Dr. Richard, Ethan said, thank you for helping me get better. Thank you, Ethan, for helping me become a better doctor. As they were leaving the hospital, Jennifer stopped at the reception desk where it had all begun just hours earlier. The same receptionist who had been rude that morning approached them. Doctor, may I speak with you? Of course. I want to apologize for my behavior this morning. It was inappropriate and disrespectful. I accept your apology, but it's important this doesn't happen to any other family. It won't, Doctor. We've all received clear guidance on the new protocols. Good. When they finally stepped outside, it was already night. Jennifer and Ethan took a taxi home, both exhausted but with the sense that they'd lived through a day that would change many lives. Mom, Ethan said in the taxi, today was a weird day, huh? Why weird, sweetheart? Because it started with you sad and me sick, but ended with a lot of people happy. Jennifer smiled. Sometimes the hardest days turn into the most important ones in our lives. Do you think things will really change at the hospital? I do, sweetheart. Because now there are many people watching to make sure the changes happen. And will you keep overseeing this? Yes, I will. Because it's my job as a judge, but also my responsibility as a mother. Ethan nestled into Jennifer's arm. Mom, thank you for standing up for me today. No need to thank me, sweetheart. That's what mothers do. And thank you for standing up for the other kids too. Jennifer felt tears welling in her eyes. You're welcome, son. The next day, the story of what had happened at Mercy Medical Center spread through the city. Local newspapers published articles about discrimination in medical care and the changes being implemented. Jennifer was approached by several families from other hospitals with similar stories. She realized the problem wasn't isolated to Mercy Medical Center, but was a systemic issue that needed to be addressed across multiple institutions. A week later, Jennifer returned to Mercy Medical Center for her first follow-up visit. She arrived unannounced and positioned herself discreetly in the waiting room to observe how the new protocols were working. For 2 hours, she watched families from different socioeconomic backgrounds being attended to. To her satisfaction, she noticed the order of care was now based solely on arrival time and medical urgency. Dorothy recognized her and approached. Doctor, it's so good to see you. How's Ethan? He's doing great, Dorothy, and how are the changes here? Very well, Doctor. All staff have received training and the doctors are following the new protocols. And Dr. Richard? Transformed, Doctor. Completely transformed. He's working weekends at County Hospital and has become much more compassionate with all his patients. That's wonderful to hear. Doctor, can I show you something? Dorothy led Jennifer to a bulletin board on the reception wall. It was covered with letters and drawings from children thanking them for their care. These started appearing after our meeting. Families are sending thanks because they feel well treated. Jennifer read some of the letters. The one written by a child said, "Thank you, doctor, for taking care of me even though I'm poor." Dorothy, this is so touching. Yes, doctor. And look at this. Dorothy pointed to a chart on the wall. What's this? Our patient satisfaction ratings. They've increased 50% in the last month. Impressive. And you know what's most interesting, doctor? Our revenue hasn't dropped. In fact, it's gone up because people are now recommending the hospital to other families. Jennifer smiled. Seems like treating people well is good business too. Exactly, doctor. Just then, Richard appeared at the reception desk. When he saw Jennifer, he walked over with a smile. Doctor, what a pleasure to see you. How's Ethan? He's doing very well, doctor. And how are you? Doctor, I can honestly say I'm finally the physician I always dreamed of being. Working weekends at County Hospital reminded me why I chose medicine. I'm so happy to hear that. Doctor, can I tell you something? Of course. Last week I treated a child at County Hospital with symptoms similar to Ethan's. The family was very poor, but I cared for that child as if she were my own daughter. And you know what I felt? What? Fulfillment. Professional fulfillment I hadn't felt in years. Dr. Richard, that's wonderful. Doctor, thank you for changing my life. I know it wasn't your intention, but that's what happened. 3 months later, Jennifer organized another meeting in the auditorium at Mercy Medical Center. This time it was to evaluate the results of the implemented changes. The auditorium was full again. But now the atmosphere was completely different. People were smiling, chatting animatedly, and seemed genuinely satisfied. "Everyone," Jennifer said into the microphone. "3 months ago, we gathered here to report problems. Today, we're here to celebrate solutions." The audience applauded enthusiastically. "I want to hear from you about how the recent care at the hospital has been." Rose stood up. "Doctor, I brought my son here last week for a routine checkup. We were seen right away with kindness and respect. It's a whole different hospital." John also spoke up. "My wife needed follow-up care. The service was excellent from start to finish." Amanda stood. "Doctor, I want to share something special. I decided to get pregnant again. And when I found out I was expecting, my first instinct was to avoid this hospital, but I decided to give it a chance. I was seen by Dr. Richard, who treated me with such warmth that I even cried." The audience was moved by Amanda's story. "And you know what he told me?" Amanda continued. "He said he'd take care of me and my baby as if we were his own family. And I believed him." Richard, who was in the audience, stood up. "Amanda, it's an honor to care for you and your baby. And I promise this time everything will be different." Benjamin stepped onto the stage. "Everyone, as the clinical director, I can say these have been the most important changes we've ever made at this hospital. And the results speak for themselves." "What results?" someone asked. "Our patient satisfaction rating went from 60% to 95%. Our average wait time was cut in half, and our referral numbers increased by 100%. The audience cheered. "But most importantly," Benjamin continued, "I can now say with pride that I work at a hospital that truly cares for people." Dorothy also spoke up. "Everyone, as a nurse, I can say I've never seen such a fast and profound transformation. All the staff are more motivated and happier at work." Mrs. Helen, the 70-year-old woman who had asked pointed questions at the first meeting, stood. "Dr. Jennifer, as the oldest person here, I want to say something. In 70 years of life, I've seen a lot of empty promises, but what happened here was real. Thank you for not giving up." Jennifer was moved by Mrs. Helen's words. "Mrs. Helen, it was all of you who didn't give up. You were the ones brave enough to speak up, to report issues, to demand change." At that moment, Ethan reappeared at the auditorium door, accompanied by several other children, kids of the families present. "Mom, can I say something?" "Of course, sweetheart." Ethan stepped onto the stage with the other children. "Everyone, we wanted to say thank you. Now, when kids get sick, they're treated right, and that's really important because sick kids get scared." Lily, the girl who'd had appendicitis, also spoke. "And now the doctors are nice to us. They explain everything and don't make us afraid." A third child added, "My name is Peter. My mum said before, doctors only took good care of people with money. Now they take good care of everyone." The simplicity and honesty of the children touched everyone in the room. Richard approached the stage. "Kids, thank you for teaching me to be a better doctor. You've been my best teachers." When the meeting ended, Jennifer stayed in the lobby talking with some families. Amanda approached her. "Doctor, can I ask a favor?" "Of course, Amanda." "When my baby is born, I'd like you to be her godmother." Jennifer was surprised and moved. "Amanda, it would be an honor. And I want to name her Hope, because that's what you brought into my life." Jennifer couldn't hold back tears. "Amanda, I'm sure Hope will grow up in a better world than the one we've known." "I'm sure of it too, Doctor." 6 months later, Mercy Medical Center had become a regional benchmark for compassionate care. Doctors from other hospitals came to learn about the implemented protocols, and the model was being replicated at other institutions. Jennifer continued her follow-up visits, but now they were less frequent because she was confident the changes were permanent. One Friday morning, she received a call from Dorothy. "Doctor, we have a surprise for you here at the hospital." "What kind of surprise, Dorothy?" "Come and see for yourself." When Jennifer arrived at the hospital with Ethan, she was greeted by a surprise party in the auditorium. Hundreds of people were there: patients, family members, hospital staff, and representatives from other hospitals in the region. "What is all this?" Jennifer asked in surprise. "It's our way of saying thank you, Doctor," said Benjamin, "for transforming not just our hospital, but our entire perspective on medicine. But I didn't do this alone, we all did it together. Exactly, said Amanda, who was visibly pregnant and glowing. That's why we want to celebrate all of us. A banner on the stage read, Mercy Medical Center, 6 months of truly compassionate care. Everyone, Jennifer said into the microphone, when I brought my son here 6 months ago, I never imagined that difficult day would lead to such profound change. And we never imagined a desperate mother would transform the way we work, Richard replied. Dr. Richard, how has this changed your personal life? Doctor, not only did I rediscover my professional purpose, but I also rediscovered myself as a person. My daughter is proud of me again. My wife respects me again. And I respect myself again. Dorothy stepped up to the microphone. Doctor, I have some news to share. What is it, Dorothy? I've been invited to give talks on compassionate care at other hospitals. Next week, I'm going to Chicago to present our model. Dorothy, that's wonderful. And I'm not going alone. Dr. Richard is coming with me. Richard nodded. Doctor, we want to spread what we've learned here to as many hospitals as possible. At that moment, a reporter from a local TV station approached Jennifer. Doctor, could we interview you about everything that's happened here? Of course, but on one condition. What's that? That you also interview the families. The real story is theirs, not mine. The interview aired on the evening news and resonated in many other cities. Jennifer began receiving invitations to speak about the case at universities and medical conferences. A month later, she received a call that would once again change her perspective on everything that had happened. Dr. Jennifer, this is Mary Ann from the Department of Health. Hello, Mary Ann, how can I help you? Doctor, we've heard about the work you've done at Mercy Medical Center. We'd like to invite you to lead a national hospital compassion program. Jennifer was stunned. A national program? Yes, doctor. We want to implement similar protocols in public and private hospitals across the country. Mary Ann, that's a huge responsibility. We know, doctor, but we also know you have the experience and credibility needed. Jennifer thought for a few seconds. Can I discuss this with my team here in Philadelphia? The people who helped make these changes happen? Of course, doctor. In fact, we'd like them to be part of the program too. Jennifer spoke with Dorothy, Richard, Amanda, and others who had been instrumental in transforming Mercy Medical Center. They all agreed to join the national program. 6 months later, Jennifer was in Washington, D.C., presenting the results from the first hospitals that had implemented the Compassion Protocol. The numbers were impressive: an average 50% reduction in wait times, a 40% increase in patient satisfaction, and a 30% decrease in complaints. But for Jennifer, the most important number was another one: 0 cases of discrimination based on financial ability in the hospitals that had implemented the protocol. During the presentation in Washington, D.C., Jennifer received a message on her phone. It was a photo of Amanda holding a newborn baby. The message read, "Hope is here, and she was welcomed with so much love at Mercy Medical Center. Thank you for everything." Jennifer smiled and showed the photo to Dorothy, who was by her side. Dorothy, I think this is the best outcome of everything we've done. I agree, doctor. A new life coming into the world and being treated with dignity. That night, in her hotel in Washington, D.C., Jennifer called home to talk to Ethan. Hi, Mom, how did the presentation go? It went really well, sweetheart. We helped a lot of hospitals treat people better. That's awesome, Mom. When are you coming back? Tomorrow, my love. Mom, can I tell you something? Of course, sweetheart. At school today, the teacher asked us to talk about someone we admire. I talked about you. Jennifer felt her heart swell with emotion. What did you say, sweetheart? I said my mom is a judge who takes care of children, and that one day when I was sick, she made a whole hospital change so they'd treat people better. Ethan, you're the one who taught me to do the right thing. What do you mean, Mom? Seeing you sick and needing help made me understand what all those other families feel. You taught me that being a judge isn't just about laws, it's about taking care of people. Mom, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor. Why, sweetheart? To take care of kids like Dr. Richard learned to do. Jennifer smiled. I'm sure you'll be a wonderful doctor. A year later, Jennifer was back at Mercy Medical Center for a special celebration. It was the first anniversary of the implementation of the humanization protocols. The auditorium was full once again, but now there were people from several cities who had implemented similar protocols in their hospitals. "Everyone," Jennifer said into the microphone, "a year ago we gathered here to solve a problem. Today we're here to celebrate a transformation that has surpassed all our dreams." The audience applauded enthusiastically. The protocol that was born here has already been implemented in over 100 hospitals across the country. That means thousands of families are being treated with dignity. Richard stood up. "Doctor, may I speak on behalf of all the doctors who took part in this transformation?" "Of course, Doctor. We want to thank you for reminding us that medicine is about caring for people, and we promise we'll never forget that again." Amanda, now holding little hope in her arms, also spoke up. "Doctor, I want everyone here to see my daughter. She was born in this hospital and welcomed with love and kindness. She's proof that these changes are real and lasting." Dorothy, who now coordinated the humanization program in several hospitals in the region, added, "Everyone, in my 25 years in this profession, I can say this is the time I've been proudest to be a nurse, because finally, I feel like we're truly making a difference in people's lives." Benjamin stepped onto the stage. "As clinical director, I want to share some numbers. In the past year, our hospital has become the highest rated in the region. Our wait times are the shortest, our patient satisfaction is the highest, and our number of referrals has tripled." "But Dr. Benjamin," interrupted Mrs. Helen, who still attended the meetings, "the most important thing isn't the numbers, it's that our families are now treated with respect." "You're absolutely right, Mrs. Helen, completely right." Ethan, now 10 years old, stepped up to the microphone. "Everyone, I want to thank you all, because it's thanks to you that my mum became an even more special person." "What do you mean, Ethan?" Jennifer asked. "Because before, you were already a good judge. Now you're a judge who changed so many people's lives." The audience was moved by Ethan's simple yet profound words. "And I want to promise you something," Ethan continued. "When I become a doctor, I'll remember everything I learned here. I'll treat every child with kindness, whether they're rich or poor." Richard Miller walked up to Ethan. "Ethan, when you graduate from medical school, I'd like to be your first patient." "Why, Dr. Richard?" "Because I'm sure you'll be the kind of doctor I always should have been." When the celebration ended, Jennifer stayed in the lobby talking with several people. A young woman she didn't know approached her. "Doctor, my name is Fern. I'm a medical student, and I came here because I wanted to see the hospital that changed the way medicine is practiced in the United States." "Fern, what do you think?" "Doctor, it's incredible. Since I arrived, I've watched the staff, doctors, and patients. Everyone seems genuinely happy and caring toward one another. And what does that teach you as a future doctor? That medicine isn't about technical protocols. It's about humanity. Fern, I'm sure you'll be a wonderful doctor." "Doctor, can I ask you something?" "Of course. When I graduate, I'd like to do my residency here, to learn not just medical skills, but medical humanity. It would be a pleasure to have you here, Fern." That night, as Jennifer and Ethan were heading home, he asked a question that made her reflect. "Mom, do you think our story is over?" "Why do you ask, son?" "Because it seems like everything's been resolved. The hospital changed, people are happy. Other hospitals are copying what we did here." Jennifer thought for a moment. "Son, I don't think our story is over. I think it's just beginning." "What do you mean?" "Because now that we know change is possible, we have a responsibility to keep making changes." "And what else can we change?" "Everything that needs changing, son. Schools, police stations, government offices, anywhere people are treated poorly just because they don't have money." Ethan smiled. "Then we've got a lot of work ahead of us." "Yes, we do, son, but it's work worth doing." 2 years later, Jennifer received an invitation to give a lecture at the medical school where Richard had studied. The topic was Humanizing Medicine, the Mercy Medical Center Experience. During the lecture, she told the whole story, from the day she arrived at the hospital with a sick Ethan to the transformations that spread across the country. "Doctors," she said at the end, "you hold in your hands the power to heal not just illnesses but social wounds. always choose to heal with humanity. A student raised his hand. Doctor, what was the most important moment in this whole transformation? Jennifer thought for a few seconds. When my son, a 9-year-old child, taught a doctor with 15 years of experience that every child deserves to be treated with kindness. That's when I realized wisdom sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Another student asked, Doctor, what would you say to doctors who find it hard to implement these changes? I'd say change is difficult, but neglect is unforgivable, and the reward of seeing families treated with dignity is worth every effort. And for patients facing discrimination, that they shouldn't accept inadequate treatment, that they should demand respect, that they should know their rights, and that, when necessary, they should fight for those rights. When the lecture ended, Richard, who had been in the audience, walked up to Jennifer. Doctor, thank you for telling our story. Our story, Dr. Richard. It's our story. Doctor, can I share some news? Of course. I've been invited to be the medical director of a public hospital in Chicago. They're going to implement the humanization protocol we developed here. Doctor, that's wonderful. And Dorothy is coming with me as nursing coordinator. I'm so proud of both of you. Doctor, none of this would have been possible if a mother hadn't refused to let her son be mistreated. Dr. Richard, all of this happened because good people decided to do the right thing. 5 years later, Jennifer was in her office at the court when she received a special call. Dr. Jennifer, it's Amanda. Amanda, how are you? And Hope? We're doing great, Doctor. Hope is 5 now and is a beautiful, healthy child. That's such a joy to hear. Doctor, I called because I wanted to share some news. What news? I've decided to go to nursing school. I want to work in hospital humanization. Jennifer was moved. Amanda, that's wonderful. After everything we went through, I realized I want to help other families. I want to be for other mothers what Dorothy was for me. Amanda, I'm sure you'll be an exceptional nurse. Doctor, can I ask you something? Of course. When I graduate, I'd like you to be my commencement speaker. Amanda, it would be the greatest honor of my life. That same afternoon, Jennifer received another special call. Mom, it was Ethan, now 15. Hi, son, how was school today? Mom, something interesting happened. What? My biology teacher talked about medical careers and asked who wanted to be a doctor. A lot of classmates raised their hands. And then she asked why we wanted to be doctors. Most said for the money or prestige. And what did you say? I said I wanted to be a doctor to care for the people no one else wants to care for. Jennifer's heart swelled with pride. What did the teacher say? She asked why I thought that way, so I told our story. I talked about the day I got sick and how everything changed after that. How did your classmates react? They were shocked, Mum. Some didn't even know these things happened in hospitals. Son, you're helping raise awareness. That's so important. Mum, can I tell you a secret? Of course, son. Sometimes when I feel discouraged or face problems, I remember that day in the hospital. I remember how you fought for me and all those families, and it gives me strength to face anything. Jennifer couldn't hold back her tears. Son, do you know you're the greatest pride of my life? I know, Mum, and you're my greatest role model. 7 years after the day that changed everything, Jennifer was back at Mercy Medical Center. This time, for a very special occasion, Ethan, now 16, had earned a research internship to shadow doctors at the hospital during his school break. Mum, Ethan said as he put on the lab coat he'd been given for the program, it's strange being back here. Why strange, son? Because the last time I was here as a patient, I was a scared kid. Now I'm here as a future doctor. Richard, now the hospital's medical director, approached them. Ethan, welcome to our team, even if it's just temporary. Dr. Richard, thank you for the opportunity. Ethan, it's an honor to have you here, and I can promise you'll learn a lot. Doctor, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you remember what it was like before the changes? Richard took a deep breath. I do, Ethan. And sometimes I have nightmares about that time. I think about how many more people could have been helped if I'd been a better doctor. But you changed, Doctor. and you helped change so many others. Thank you, Ethan. But I'll never forget that it was you and your mother who taught me to be human again. Dorothy, who had returned to Mercy Medical Center as the director of nursing after her experience in Chicago, joined the conversation. Ethan, how wonderful to have you here. I can say this hospital is very different from when you first came here. How so, Dorothy? Today we have one of the lowest complaint rates in the country, our wait times are excellent, and most importantly, every family feels welcome here. Amanda, who now worked as a nurse at Mercy Medical Center, also approached. Ethan, it's so good to see you here. Amanda, how are you? And Hope? We're doing great. Hope is 7 now and always asks about you and your mother. She says you're heroes in our family. We're not heroes, Amanda. We just did what was right. Ethan, Amanda said, can I tell you a secret? Of course. Every day when I come to work, I pass by the room where your mother first told our story, and I always give thanks for that day. Why? Because it was the day my life changed for the better. It was the day I understood I could turn pain into purpose. During the 2 weeks Ethan shadowed the doctors at the hospital, he witnessed several situations that deeply moved him. He saw children being treated with care, poor families being treated with dignity, and doctors who truly cared for their patients. Mum, he said on the last day of the program, now I understand why you cried so much that day. Why, son? Because when we see a child being mistreated, it's not just about that one child, it's about all children. It's about what kind of society we want to have. Son, you understand perfectly. And now I also understand why you never gave up. Why? Because some fights are too important to quit. At that moment, a girl about 9 years old approached them at the hospital reception. She was with her parents and seemed to have just been treated. Excuse me, she said shyly. Are you the judge and the boy from the story? Jennifer was surprised. What story, sweetheart? The story about the hospital's transformation. My mom told me you fought so all children would be treated well here. Yes, that's us, Ethan replied. But it wasn't just us. It was a lot of people together. Can I give you a hug? Jennifer and Ethan hugged the girl, visibly moved. Thank you for fighting for us kids, she said. As the family walked away, Jennifer looked at Ethan. Son, I think our story isn't really over. How so, Mom? Because it keeps inspiring others to do the right thing. And is that good? It's the best thing that can happen to a story, son, for it to inspire other stories. 10 years after that transformative day, Jennifer received a very special invitation. It was for the medical school graduation of a class that had chosen to honor the Mercy Medical Center experience as inspiration for their medical careers. During the ceremony, Jennifer was asked to speak to the graduates. Doctors, she said in her speech, you're graduating at a time when we know medicine goes far beyond technique and knowledge. It's about humanity, dignity, and compassion. The audience applauded. The story many of you know didn't start as a story about medicine. It started as a story about a desperate mother and a sick boy, but it became a story about how small actions can create big changes. One of the graduates stood up. Doctor, what's the most important advice you'd give to us new doctors? Jennifer thought for a moment. Always remember that every patient is someone who is loved by someone. It could be a mother loving her child, a child loving their father, a wife loving her husband. Treat every patient the way you'd want the person you love most in the world to be treated. Another graduate asked, Doctor, how do we make sure we don't become corrupted by the system? By keeping alive the memory of why you chose medicine in the first place, and by surrounding yourselves with people who remind you of that reason when you forget. When the ceremony ended, a young doctor approached Jennifer. Doctor, my name is Philip. Can I tell you something? Of course, Philip. I chose medicine because of your story. My family is poor, and I know what it's like to be mistreated for not having money. I want to be a doctor so I can treat people like me with kindness. Philip, I'm certain you'll be an exceptional doctor. Doctor, can I ask you for something? Of course. When I get my first job as a doctor, I'd like to invite you to see my work. It would be an honor, Philip. That night, when Jennifer got home, she found Ethan, now 20, and in his 3rd year of medical school, studying at the kitchen table. Hi, Mum. How was the graduation? It was moving, son. I met so many doctors who were inspired by our story. Our story keeps spreading kindness in the world. Yes, it does, son. Mom, can I tell you something? Of course. Yesterday, during a shift at the teaching hospital, I treated a child who reminded me so much of myself that day. How so? He was a poor boy with a desperate mother. I saw other students treating them badly because of how they looked. Then I remembered everything we went through. What did you do? I treated the boy with all the care I could. I explained everything to his mother, took care of him like he was my little brother, and I talked to the other students about the importance of treating every patient with dignity. Jennifer smiled proudly. Son, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. Mom, sometimes I think about how different our lives would be if that day hadn't happened. How so? I'd just be another future doctor. You'd just be another judge. But now we're people who know we can make a difference in the world. Son, that painful day became the most important day of our lives. And you know what's most amazing, Mom? What? It all started because you refused to let me be mistreated. A mother protecting her son ended up protecting thousands of other families. Jennifer hugged Ethan. Son, a mother's love moves mountains. And changes hospitals too, Ethan laughed. 15 years after that transformative day, Jennifer was in her office at the courthouse when she received a call that moved her deeply. Dr. Jennifer Davis, this is Dr. Ethan Davis, her son, now a full-fledged doctor working at a public hospital. Hello, Dr. Ethan, she said, teasing the title. How's your first day going? Mom, it's indescribable. Today I treated 15 children and their families. I treated each one like they were the most important thing in the world. How did the families feel? One mother cried, Mom. She said it was the first time a doctor had explained everything with patience and care. Son, you're making a difference. Mom, can I tell you what stood out most today? Of course. I treated a 9-year-old boy with symptoms just like mine that day. His mother was desperate, with no money, afraid they wouldn't be treated well. What did you do? I took care of him like he was my own son. And I told his mother our story. I said that once. I was that scared little boy, and thanks to her fight and so many other mothers, I could now be the doctor who cares for other children. Jennifer couldn't hold back her tears. Son, the circle is complete. What do you mean, Mom? You've become exactly what we needed that day, a doctor who treats every child with love. Mom, there's something I want to tell you. What is it, son? Thank you for fighting for me that day. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for teaching me that fighting for justice is worth it. Son, thank you for giving me the chance to do the right thing. 20 years after that day that changed everything, Jennifer Davis was retired, but still active in hospital humanization projects. Ethan was now a respected doctor and coordinator of humanization efforts in several hospitals. On a Sunday afternoon, they were at Mercy Medical Center visiting the Transformation Museum, which had been created to tell the story of the changes implemented. Mom, Ethan said, looking at the photos on the wall, look at this picture of us from the day of the first meeting. You were so little, son. And you were so brave. It wasn't bravery, son. It was a mother's desperation. It was bravery, Mom. Bravery to stand up to an unfair system. They stopped in front of a panel with hundreds of photos of children who had been well cared for at the hospital over the years. Son, all these children had the childhood you almost didn't get, and they had it because you fought for them. We fought, son. All of us fought. At that moment, a family approached them in the museum, a middle-aged couple accompanied by a young man around 20 years old. Excuse me, the woman said. Are you Judge Jennifer and Dr. Ethan? We are, Jennifer replied. My name is Fern. This is my husband Charles and our son Gabriel. Gabriel stepped forward. Dr. Ethan, I've really wanted to meet you. I'm a medical student and you're both my inspiration. Gabriel, it's a pleasure to meet you. Doctor, can I tell you something? Of course. When I was 5, I was treated here at this hospital. My family was very poor, but we were still treated with so much kindness. I've never forgotten that day. And that's why you decided to study medicine? Exactly. I want to be a doctor to treat other kids the way I was treated. Jennifer and Ethan were moved by his words. Gabriel, Jennifer said. Your story shows that the changes have lasted and are still inspiring new generations. Doctor, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think you really changed the world? Jennifer looked around the museum at the photos of thousands of families who had been treated well, thought of the hundreds of hospitals that had implemented humanization protocols, remembered the thousands of doctors and nurses inspired by their story. Gabriel, we didn't change the whole world, but we changed the world for a lot of people, and that's already a lot. Doctor, thank you for proving that it's possible to make a difference. As the family walked away, Ethan looked at Jennifer. Mom, our story really doesn't have an end, does it? It doesn't, son. Because everyone who's inspired by it writes a new chapter. And what's the next chapter of our story? Jennifer smiled. The next chapter is you, son. It's Gabriel. It's every doctor, every nurse, every family who chooses to do the right thing. Mom, can I tell you something? Always, son. That day was the worst and the best day of my life. Why? Worst, because I was so sick and scared. Best, because it taught me that one person can make a difference in the world. Jennifer hugged Ethan. Son, sometimes the worst moments turn into the most important ones, and sometimes a mother protecting her child ends up protecting the whole world. When they left the museum, it was already evening. They walked through the hospital reception, watching families being treated with kindness and dignity. Mom, Ethan said, do you remember the question you asked me in the taxi that day? What question? You asked if I thought things would change at the hospital. I remember, and you said yes. And I was right, wasn't I? You were, son. Completely right. Mom, can I ask you something now? Of course. Do you think our story will inspire others to fight for justice? Jennifer looked around, seeing families being well cared for, doctors tending to their patients with kindness, and nurses patiently explaining procedures. Son, our story is already inspiring, and it will keep inspiring for many generations to come. How can you be so sure? Because stories of love, courage, and justice never die. They multiply. End of story. Now tell us, do you believe one person can truly change an entire system? Which moment in the story moved you the most? Share your thoughts on this transformation in the comments below. If you know of similar cases or have an experience to share, we'd love to hear it. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.